Alright, y'all, I'm here to finally talk about Kendrick's new album, Mr. Morale and the Big Steppers. Y'all ready? Let's go.
I came to vibe, you came to function, just do that, baby. Don't worry about nothing, no.
What's good, y'all? It's your boy Bright here, the R&B kid, and I'm back again with another episode of On the Bright Side TV. Welcome back, y'all. How you doing? Hope you're doing very well. Listen, y'all, I had to hop up on this camera and finally talk about Kendrick's album, Mr. Morale and the Big Steppers. I know it's been a minute since this album dropped, but I've just been busy with stuff and living life, and I don't want to rush this video because it's Kendrick. You know, he's if y'all know me, y'all know Kendrick's one of my favorite artists, one of my favorite rappers in the game. So I had to take my time to really live this album before I just talked about it. I don't want to rush it out. But yeah, man, Kendrick Lamar, the king himself, King Kendrick, is back with his 5th studio album, Mr. Morale and the Big Steppers. And man, what a moment this is for Kendrick and for all of his fans. This album has been like literally 5 years in the making. He's not given us an album in 5 years since Damn 2017. And this is like his first album of the decade. It's his first double album, which I thought was a dope idea because I don't think we've had a double album by we've had a lot of long albums, but I don't think we've had, you know, a double album by intentionally a double album by like a mainstream big artist, and done in such a good way as this album was. So I love the idea of the double album. This is his first album since the birth of his son, which was revealed on the album cover and in the album itself. We already knew he had a daughter, but now we know he has a son too, so he got 2 kids. That's also Kendrick's last album on TDE, which is a big deal too as well. It's crazy to think that we're here now after all these years. We're finally here and Kendrick, you know, giving his last album to TDE, and we're on to the next chapter. This album is on TDE, the last one, but it's also on his new imprint, PG Lang. I think this is his first album on that imprint, as well as still being on Aftermath and Interscope. So this is really a landmark album for Kendrick's career and for his fans, like I said. So yeah, very important album. And I was so excited for this project because not only because I stan Kendrick, but just because I was really looking forward to seeing, you know, what he had to say and how he would really, you know, roll this album out after what we've been through with the pandemic, with him being gone for so long. And I was kind of surprised he took so long after all these years, but then he said on the album that he was going through writer's block. And I'm assuming it was probably at the start of the pandemic, or maybe like before the pandemic or at the start of it and during the pandemic, he was going through writer's block, which makes complete sense as to why we were kind of, you know, starved of a Kendrick album for like 5 years at this point. Because I thought he was gonna put out something like in 2020 or last year, but you know, obviously the pandemic hit, and I think he was just going through stuff. But at the end of the day, I'm not mad that they've got the album now because, like I said before, I love when artists take their time and make sure that they give us the right project that they want to give us. Like when everything is right and everything's aligned in place, and when they have something to say, and when they really feel like it's right to put it out. I hate when artists just, you know, put out projects just to put it out because they feel like they need to have something in the marketplace. Like, nah, I'd rather you take your time, live your life, have something to say, really make sure the music is on point, and make sure the rollout is on point, and then give it to us when it's right. And I feel like that's what Kendrick did with this album. It feels like he gave it to us at a great time in his life and at a great time in just his career. And I was really excited for it, and I really anticipated it crazy. And I think he definitely delivered for sure. This is his 5th album. And for some reason, Kendrick is out here just going crazy as if like he just hopped in the game. And I feel like he's just as hungry and just as, yeah, he's just as hungry, just as talented, and just as distinct and special as when he first hopped on the scene, which is insane. But we're here almost 10 years after, you know, the release of Good Kid, Mad City, you know, almost 15 years after he really came into the game in a real way, and like he's delivering at a high level like never before, and it's just insane to see. So I'm so excited for this album to do what it's gonna do this year. I'm so excited that he's back on the scene. So let's talk about this album, y'all. It was released on Friday the 13th, May 13th, 2022, which is really insane. Shout out to Kendrick for being that bold. I fuck with it. And no one else released that week, because why would you? In terms of, you know, features, we got people like Blast, Sampha, Taylor Page on my favorite tracks, Summer Walker, Ghostface Killah. We got Kodak Black on a few tracks, which I was surprised by, but I really warmed up to those tracks, even though I don't really rock with Kodak like that. But honestly, he did kill his tracks, so I'll be honest about that. We got Baby Keem on a few tracks, Sam Dude, Tana Leone, who I think is a new signee for TDE, so shout out to him, he's cool. And Beth Gibbons on my favorite tracks as well, and also Amanda Reefer. Yeah, so a lot of cool artists on this project. We got 9 tracks on each side for this double album. And in terms of producers, we got people, I feel like this album was mostly produced by like Soundwave. I feel like Soundwave handled doing most of this album. He killed it. Soundwave was like the main guy, but we also have people like, you know, DJ Dahi as well. DJ Dahi did a lot of this. Shout out to DJ Dahi, one of my favorite producers. Shout out to DJ Dahi. I love that guy. I feel like he's such an underrated producer that we don't talk about enough, but I love DJ Dahi. He killed this album as well. He produced mad tracks here. We also got people like Boy Wonder, Jahan Sweet as well. We got Tay Beast and J Labs on some tracks. We got, you know, Pharrell on the track on Mr. Morale, Cardo. Who else we got? We got Bacon or Beacon, The Alchemist on We Cry Together, DJ Khalil. You know, yeah, a lot of people. But yeah, so those are the main producers that worked on this album. But now let's get into my thoughts on the album. Y'all ready? Let's go. Alright, so I will say, before this album dropped, in terms of everybody's like, you know, preconceived notions about what it was gonna sound like, I was one of those people that thought that this album was gonna sound like a 2020s cousin, or like a part 2 to Pimp a Butterfly. I just felt that in my spirit. Like, I feel like Kendrick's gonna give us another album that's not really focused on bops, not focused on hits. It's more focused on, you know, being a statement album that's talking about something deep and special and important to him. And it's gonna be very musical, and it's gonna be, I thought it was gonna be, but the thing about this album is that I think it's like that, but unlike To Pimp a Butterfly, it's not as jazzy as that album. That album was really more so like jazzy and musical. And this album is very musical too, but not in like the jazzy, you know, like musical poetic way. This one is very much so like a more like harder version of what I think T-Pab was. But I think I was right in that I feel like this album to me gives me the essence of a T-Pab, but in a new decade, in a new time period, a new phase of his life. But to me, the sound is a little bit different, but I feel like it still has that same essence. So I feel like I was kind of right, but I kind of wasn't. So let me know what y'all thought. What, like before the album came out, like what y'all think it was gonna be? Did y'all think it was gonna be like, you know, like another Damn, or like another T-Pab like me, or another Good Kid, Mad City, or something completely different like it kind of is? Let me know what y'all thought the album was gonna be like before it came out. But that was what I thought. And like I said, I feel like I was kind of right, because I feel like, to me, this album feels the most closest to T-Pab in terms of any of his previous projects, but it also has its own identity, its own vibe as well, because it's not as jazzy and experimental as that album was. But it's also experimental in its own way that I love as well. So, and I think one of the critiques that a lot of people have, not really a critique, but I think something a lot of people noted about this album, and maybe some people were kind of disappointed by, was that this album didn't really have like any, like, you know, out of the gate hits, or like just like clear bangers like when you first heard it, or even after hearing it up a couple times. I think maybe a lot of people thought that this album, they enjoyed it, but they were looking for like a Humboldt, or, you know, a Swimming Pools Drank, or you know, just like an Alright, like, you know, one of those just like instant classic bangers that's just like that everybody can like easily access and just rock to. And I think that's true. This album doesn't really have any of those like out of the gate bangers, and that's what I noticed about the album when I first heard it too. But for some reason, even though I noticed that and I was thinking about it, it didn't bother me at all. And I feel like for some reason, this album, I was completely okay with it being an album where I didn't feel like there was like any like out of the gate, like straight up like easy to digest bangers like the kind of was on previous albums. Like, you know, on Damn we had Humble, DNA, we had Loyalty, like we had Love, like all those tracks were like easy, like pop, you know, popular hits that were on the Hot 100 like for weeks doing a thing. This album, I don't know if we're gonna have those long-lasting singles that are like pop hits that, you know, go to radio and, you know, like are accessed by everybody. I don't know if we'll have those like GP hits like that. If anything, the closest songs to those I think would be, you know, N95, Die Hard, and maybe Silent Hill. I think those are all the tracks that were in the top 10 when the album came out on Hot 100, as well as United in Grief. So I think those three tracks in particular, N95, Silent Hill, and Die Hard, those tracks are the tracks that could be like the hits for the album. But even though when I first heard the album, I was like, yeah, there's not really no hits like that, but I was okay with that, because I feel like this is the album where it just feels like this is not about hits, it's really just about this statement and the body of work. And I was cool with that, because this is an album where it's so amazing and it's so fully fleshed out, it's so fully realized, and it's so well made and well executed that I was not worried about a single, I wasn't worried about a hit, because I'm like, at this point, to me, I'm gonna rock these songs in my own, like on my own time, I'm gonna rock these songs, and I feel like we all will. And to me, I feel like Kendrick's at a point where he doesn't need to prove himself with hits. He doesn't need to prove himself with like instant bangers. To me, Kendrick is worried about his legacy. He's worried about making albums that no one else can make. He's worried about really giving us songs to change our lives, not just rock to. And that's what he did with this album. And to me, it's cool because I think he actually gave us songs, like I said, that are bangers, like the ones I said. But overall, I think that wasn't his intention with this album, and I'm okay with that. So for anybody who had like a beef with that, let me know if y'all still feel like the album has no hits, or if y'all like wanted hits, or if y'all like were mad about it but are not mad about it anymore. Let me know what y'all thought about that. But also, in terms of how the album feels as a whole, with in terms of talk about hits and stuff like that, I also feel like the reason why I wasn't really mad that this album didn't really have any out of the gate hits when I first heard it is because I feel like this album to me feels like one of his most special albums to date, because I feel like it feels like the best of all of his previous projects in one, which I don't think we've ever had before. Like, this album feels like the best of a little bit of Good Kid, Mad City with that storytelling, and then it feels like a little bit of To Pimp a Butterfly with the musicality and with the experimental nature of that album, and with just how intimate that album was with like how transparent he was with like his thoughts and emotions and what he was going through. And then it kind of gave me a little bit of Damn with like the brashness and the boldness and just like the great sequencing and really it feeling like a great body of work. So it also kind of having songs that could be like hits as well, like having that element of like bangers, which I think Dan gave us a lot of that. I feel like he gave us that hero songs, like I said, like N95, Die Hard, Silent Hill. Like he gave us those songs that could be bangers too. So which I feel like gives me the damn vibes, while still feeling hard as hell. So I feel like this album, to me, I loved how I feel like he gave us a mix of the best of all of his previous projects, but in a new way, and I loved it. So in terms of the themes on this album, I think when I first heard the album, there were so many themes to digest and kind of like work through that at first was kind of overwhelming when I first heard the album. But once you really live with the album and hear it a few times, it gets less overwhelming, and all the themes make sense, and they all kind of melt together, and they all connect, and they're all relevant, and they're all important to not only Kendrick and his story and his life and what he's telling, talking about the story where he's at now in his life, but also I feel like all the themes are so relevant to all of us as fans and how we can connect with them, because I feel like everything here is so relevant and it all makes sense, and I feel like so many of us can connect to so many of these things in different ways, or either some or all of them in different ways. So even though it felt overwhelming, I loved how he was able to have so many themes on this album and it not seem too disjointed and not seem all over the place. It still seemed very organized, intentional, and everything made sense and everything was sequenced well. So I love that about this album. In terms of the themes that I saw for this album that I noticed, I want to say definitely grief for sure. That was a big theme for me. Tracks like United in Grief, just talking about how he deals with grief and how we all deal with grief differently. Fatherhood and toxic masculinity, with tracks like Father Time. I definitely noticed that theme as well. I also noticed themes around generational trauma and healing from generational trauma on tracks like Worldwide Steppers, Father Time, Purple Hearts, Savior on Auntie Diaries, Miss Morale. Like we have a lot of that on this album. He talked about sexual abuse on Mother I Sober, which was one of my favorite tracks on this album. I was really surprised by that, but he went there and it was amazing. He talked about like transphobia and trans rights on Auntie Diaries. He talks about inner turmoil a lot on this album. On pretty much all the tracks he talked about just dealing with inner turmoil and just those demons that we all deal with internally and externally as well. He talks about the pressure and also the downfall of like celebrity and idolizing people and always working to like please everybody in your life. Just that pressure of like idolizing people, celebrity, and like the amount of like gas and energy we give to the idea of like celebrity and idolizing people, and having those people work to please everybody when that's an impossible task on things like on tracks like Crown. There's a lot of tracks that really touched on that as well. And then we also have themes around like not catering to yourself and not taking care of yourself, which I thought was an important theme as well. I feel like Kendrick really touched on that being something that he struggled with a lot in his past few years, is like not thinking about and not taking care of his own mental health, and is not taking care of his own well-being, how that's affected the people around him, like his girl Whitney and his kids and his family and his colleagues and stuff like that, and his friends. And I think that's such an important thing that we don't talk about enough, is just like the strong friend, the friend that everybody loves, that, you know, has like put their community on their back because of either their wealth or their fame or their resources or whatever it is, and no one giving them the time to like just always be able to tap in with themselves and take care of themselves before they can take care of everybody else. So I thought it was such an important thing that he talks about in this album, such an important thing that we don't talk about enough. And to me, this album, like, you know, talking about the themes, I feel like this album spoke to me in so many different ways. I feel like all these things I can connect with, especially, you know, the things about, you know, fatherhood. I didn't grow up with my father, and he talks about that. He's like, you know, for all your brothers who don't go with your fathers, you know, he said like, you know, he's like, I want to give y'all grace or something like that. He said, and I really love that line, just talking about like, you know, for those of y'all who didn't go with your fathers, like, I wish the best for y'all, and I hope y'all found a better route than I did to kind of, you know, traverse those toxic masculinity waves the way I had to do it. So I definitely can relate to, you know, the themes around, you know, dealing with toxic masculinity and fatherhood with the lack of a father in my life, and how I had to traverse that. Generational trauma and healing. I feel like as an African, as a Nigerian man, we all can relate to that. Like, come on, if you African or Caribbean, for sure. If you Asian, for sure we can relate to that. Like, no shade to our parents, the previous generation, but we all can deal with that generational trauma for sure. Our parents can relate to it for sure. I can relate to, you know, the things around inner turmoil and trying to figure out like your inner demons and figuring out like, you know, what's important to you, what's bothering you, like how to communicate these things to the people around you that you love, and just trying to, you know, take life one day at a time and figure your stuff out. We all can relate to that. We all have things that we're dealing with that we're trying to figure out. And I think Kendrick really gave his listeners and his fans a space to feel heard and to feel seen by those little things that we don't talk about, that we don't really, you know, communicate, but that we all feel. So I love that. And lastly, just you know, the theme around not taking care of yourself and not caring to yourself. I think that's something that as I grow older, I'm making more of an intention within myself to make sure I take care of myself and pay attention to myself, because if I don't watch that, I'm gonna get sucked into trying to take care of like things at my job and, you know, family, friends, all that. But if I'm not taking care of myself, I won't have enough energy to you know, to give love and to give energy to all the other things. So that was definitely an important theme that spoke to me, and to remind myself to tap into myself and take care of myself, even when I'm trying to, you know, not do it because I feel like there's no time or because I gotta focus on this or that. It's like, now you gotta make sure you take care of yourself. So that was an important theme that I had, that for me I got in this album for sure. And yeah, to me, the themes on this album were really what make this album a complete standout for the year, because I don't think there's any album this year that would touch what this album did in terms of the themes and the stories that it was able to get across. It's crazy. But yeah, y'all, the sequencing for this album I feel like was damn near perfect. I feel like every track flowed into the next in terms of not only just how things felt thematically, but also how everything sounded, and it just all felt like one long story that made sense. And everything was sequenced perfectly. For me, I feel like this album was just honestly like one big therapy session over amazing beats. Like, I feel like that's the best way to describe it. I was really surprised by how open, free-flowing, and transparent and vulnerable this man was on this album. Like, for real, y'all. When I first heard the album, I was like, damn, like there were so many times on the album, you know, on tracks like, you know, We Cry Together, United in Grief, Worldwide Steppers, Crown, Auntie Diaries, Mother I Sober. Like, there were so many tracks where I was just like, damn, like he really went there in terms of the stories he told. And yeah, I just really appreciated the vulnerability, him being open, his transparency. I feel like it was such a king move for a black man in his position to just be as open and honest as he was on this album about where he's at mentally, where he's at in his life, what he's going through, what he's been going through, what he's thinking about, and just the way he was able to like just beautifully rap and just put on wax so poetically all these stories and all these thoughts in such an organized and free-flowing and kind of messy but also very organized way was so beautiful to see. And yeah, man, for him to just express what he's been going through, and not necessarily him telling us himself, or not necessarily him telling himself or us, you know, how to feel about it, but more so just leaving all of it there for it to resonate and connect in any way that the listener feels fit. To me, was just such a dope thing to do, and to me that was the intention I saw. I feel like with this album, Kendrick wasn't really, you know, he wasn't really trying to get across like how he wanted himself or us to feel about what he was saying. He just wanted to put it all out there like in one big therapy session, and for us to just kind of, you know, sit with it, listen to it, you know, soak it up, and take it for what it is in our own lives and how we feel about it. And I think that's the most beautiful thing about this album, is that it's not really dedicated towards a certain fan base or towards a certain type of listener or towards a certain type of person. It's really just Kendrick, you know, just pouring his heart out, pouring his life out on wax, and just him letting you do what you want with it. You know, letting it apply to you however you want it to apply to you. And that is such a hard thing to do as an artist, but it's one of the best things you can do as an artist, and one of the most sophisticated things you can do as an artist is to really have that going on with the project. And I feel like Kendrick achieved that with this album. So I have to salute him for that. And just not making it too complicated, not making it too, you know, not giving us any preconceived bias, just giving us straight, amazing stories that we could connect to, and just letting that be what it is. So I love that. But yeah, kind of going off of that, I feel like there were just too many dope like stories and vignettes that were like, you know, painted on this album with Kendrick's words and with his flow over these amazing beats. I feel like there were just too many dope stories that were so piercing and unbelievably like hard to listen to sometimes, but they were real as fuck. And these are all stories that needed to be told and needed to be expressed and heard for our collective healing. I feel like a lot of stories that Kendrick was telling this album, whether it's related to just him or, you know, his family, you know, his mental, him in the industry, and just life in general with the pandemic, like he told so many stories that we all can relate to and that were mad hard to listen to. And a lot of tracks you want to like sit down to and like rock out to like at the party, but these are tracks that you're gonna sit down to and they're gonna change your perspective. And you know, a lot of these stories are hard to listen to. They were piercing, but they were real as fuck. And like I said, they were all necessary for our society, especially the Black community, but really for our society at large, for us to start our collective healing from generational trauma, from trauma that we give each other in all different types of ways, from trauma that we give ourselves in all different types of ways. I feel like this album is such a good tool for us, for people who love hip hop, for people who love music, for people who love Kendrick, to be able to start, you know, looking within themselves and start thinking about, you know, how they want to start, you know, going about their own journey of healing. And that is just amazing, man, for real. And I guess the last thing I'll say about the album in general is that I really loved how this album felt like a real body of work, because there's so many cool things that Kendrick intertwined throughout the album that I loved. Like, you know, we had like, you know, him talking about Whitney and his kids, and we also had Whitney, his girl, like, you know, having like a few like spoken interludes throughout the project as well that I loved. So I loved hearing her. You know, she was like kind of like his like angel on his left. I don't know, whatever good angel. I feel like Whitney was like his good angel on like his shoulder, kind of like, you know, being like the voice of reason throughout the whole album. Like he was like figuring this stuff out. Like Whitney was like that voice of like reason on the album that kind of like, you know, took him back to the center and made him like evaluate things. Like I loved hearing her voice throughout the album as well. So I thought hearing Whitney was dope. I love that. Hearing Kodak Black throughout the album was cool. At first it threw me off because I don't rock with Kodak like that. But honestly, hearing Kodak throughout the album at some points was cool too. It really made the album flow really well. That was a cool piece that I liked. And also a lot of the tracks had like this like kind of like an intro, like a short outro with like this like choir vibe. I don't know if it was like one person singing or if it was like a multiple, I don't know if it was like a choir singing, but had like, you know what I'm talking about, had like that choir vibe and then like, I love that. It made the album feel like a real body of work, because it wasn't like one track had that, like several tracks had that either as the intro for the outro for the track, like having that choir vibe. So it really made the album feel seamless, and it really sequenced it well with that aspect. And also, just also like a tap dancing too, like hearing like, you know, it's much about the Big Steppers, you know, hearing the tap dancing throughout several tracks on the album, I thought was such a great way to make this album flow so well and feel like one body of work, and to really connect all these tracks with just this. I feel like you know, having the choir intro and outros, having Whitney talk, you know, having the tap dancing effect. I feel like all these little things I was listening to on the album, it made, even though all the tracks were, you know, they all had different sounds, different vibes, and different topics, those little things made the album so connected, and it made the album feel like one body of work in such a really dope way with those small details that I love. So I really picked up on those little small details that, and there's probably been more that I didn't probably even pick up on yet, because this album is so dense and so, I feel like this album that will be analyzed for years and years to come. But yeah, man, I loved seeing those little things. It was amazing. And I guess lastly, I also feel like he talked a lot about like mask and the pandemic a lot too. So I love that. I feel like with this album, we can look back and hear Kendrick talking about the, you know, about the pandemic, and it'll be a great marker in history for what we've been through these past couple years with the pandemic. And I love how Kendrick wasn't shy. He didn't shy away from talking about his thoughts on how the pandemic affected, you know, him and his people and just all of us, and, you know, talk about masks and just how COVID, like, you know, fucked him up and fucked all of us up. Like, and so I love that. It's a great marker for this time in our world. And I just love, I feel like Kendrick got everything. He talked about current events, like, you know, he talked about like Drake and Kanye making up. He talked about COVID. He talked about R. Kelly. He talked about a lot of different things that were just so current that will make you remember this time that we were in. So I loved it. While still making the album feel timeless as hell. So amazing. Alright y'all, that's pretty much my overall thoughts on the album. If you haven't been able to tell, I love this album. I have like no critiques for it, which is rare for me. But honestly, I've heard this album like 3 times now, you know, through and through. And I really don't have any real critiques for it. I feel like I said, a critique could be that maybe y'all want like more like, you know, straight away, like straight up ahead bops. But I was cool with that. But other than that, I feel like this album is hella solid. This album was made so well. It was executed so well. I don't really have any critiques for it, to be honest. So shout out to Kendrick on that regard. In terms of my favorite tracks on the album, that is hard because to me, this is one of those rare and special albums where almost every track feels as important as the next. Like, it's not really many tracks that I can highlight because all these tracks feel important. There's no filler on this album. Every track feels dope, every track feels necessary, every track feels connected, and every track feels just as important as the next. Like, it's really hard for me to pull out favorites because every track is dope in its own way. So it's like, most times I can pick out my favorites, but this album is like an album where I appreciate almost every track in a different way. So it's hard for me to pick out favorites. But I will say, I guess like, I was trying to pick out my favorites for y'all, and I literally was listening to every track, like literally. So it's like, I don't really have actually favorites because I love every track. So, but I will say, even though I pretty much love every track, I think, to me, the tracks that just, I think, stick to my spirit in a whole different type of way, like off rip, definitely We Cry Together with him and Taylor Page. The first time I heard that track, I went bananas. I was going crazy. I listened to it in my car on my way to work, and I was like Kendrick, Taylor, oh my God. I was going nuts because I was like, this track is insane. Kendrick's energy, insane. Taylor's vocal and her energy on that track, insane. If y'all don't know, quiet as it's kept, I am a low-key stan of Taylor Page. I low-key love that woman. I think she's one of the most gorgeous women on this planet, and I think she could be one of like the biggest and best actresses of our generation if she keeps going. I think Taylor Page is such an underrated actress and is such an underrated person. I think her aura, her beauty, her talent as an actress is just everything. I was on her before this track. I was big love Taylor Page. So when I saw her in this album, I was like, oh shit. And then not only that, but she gave us the performance of a lifetime with Kendrick on We Cry Together. That track is insane. Insane. So that's, to me, that's like an instant highlight of the album. Like a track that I'm not gonna like play all the time because it's a really traumatic track, it's a heavy track. But in terms of just how beautiful and how amazing the track is, definitely my favorites. That was a moment for this album. Him and Taylor Page, y'all did that. Salute. Crazy track. That is really tough for a lot of people. A lot of people can connect to that. And we gotta heal, y'all. We gotta heal. And also, besides We Cry Together, also Mother I Sober. That track right there is, to me, one of the best tracks on the album, one of my instant favorites, and just to me a track that is like not only one of the best tracks that Kendrick has ever made, but a track that I feel like truly will change lives, and it has already changed my life in terms of just, you know, giving me a track that I feel like can speak to, like, just speak to the power of hip hop and just speak to the power of hip hop to like really express the real shit that we don't always express every day. Talking about, you know, sexual trauma, sexual abuse, and how that has affected, you know, generations, and his mom, and then him, and for him to be that, for this man to be that vulnerable on that track was just like insane. And then the beautiful hook by Beth Gibbons, like just talking about, you know, not wanting to be here and wanting to be someone else. Like, oh my God, like that track was beautiful and just an out of this world track, for real, out of this world. Every track here is crazy, but those two tracks in particular were tracks that just like, they do something for me in a different way. But yeah, in terms of what I say are, oh, and also Father Time. I'll talk about Father Time. Father Time as well as another track to me that just like, in terms of what it's talking about as a black man, a lot of us can relate to this track. Whether we had a father in our lives that was toxic to us, or whether or not we didn't have a father, you know, either side of that spectrum, a lot of us can relate to this track, and such a powerful track thematically. Sampha's voice on it was beautiful as well. I love Kendrick's verses, what he was talking about. That track was amazing. So yes, so also that's one of the other tracks I like. for me is an instant like classic, amazing, out of this world track. Yeah, so to me those are the instant songs that like instantly just like took me to a different place. But in terms of tracks that I say are like instant bops or songs that I think are just great, songs that I will love like as time goes on from this album, like the ones that are gonna be like the great gems from this album, I'd say we got N95 for sure. Die Hard, shout out to Blast on that one, I love that. It's a song with the Cali vibe on it, I love Die Hard. It gives us like a little, you know, R&B breezy vibe on it, I love it. Also, Rich Spirit as well, Rich Spirit for sure. Purple Heart, shout out to Summer Walker and Ghostface on that one. Purple Hearts is a really dope record, shout out to them. And then Silent Hill with Kodak Black. Get these niggas up me like, huh, bitches up me like, huh. You know what I'm saying? A whole banger, I love that song. So yeah, man, to me those 5 tracks are the tracks that are like instant bangers off of the album. But like I said, every track here is amazing, so I don't really have like favorites. I also love Worldwide Steppers as well. Worldwide Steppers is a cool track. So the first time I fucked the white bitch, first time I fucked the white bitch. You know what I'm saying? Shout out to Kendrick for the honesty. So yeah, I love Worldwide Steppers as well. Crown is a special track, just talking about not being able to please everybody, real as hell. I love Savior. Auntie Diaries was a really interesting track that a lot of y'all had an issue with, and I get it. I don't think Kendrick was being offensive on that track. I think he was just, you know, telling his truth from his perspective, and I don't think he's trying to be like, I don't know, but I'm also not trained, so I can't speak to that experience. But let me know what you think about Auntie Diaries. I thought it was a great track, and I loved what he was doing with that track. But if you had an issue with that, I completely get it. But I'd also love to let me know why you had an issue with that track down below. But for me, musically, and just what he was getting off on that track, I thought it was great. So let me know what y'all thought about that track. Yeah, Mirror is great. Mr. Morale is great. Shout out to Pharrell on that track. All these tracks are great. And then he also added the Heart Part 5 at the end as like a diss 3, like recently, I guess because of the streams or whatever, I don't know, but interesting move. I don't think it's necessary, but whatever, do you think? But yeah, man, those are all my favorite tracks off the album. Pretty much the end of the whole album I mentioned. And in terms of my rating for this album, y'all, come on, y'all already know what's going on. Y'all already know what's going on. I'm not gonna give this album a 5 out of 5, because that's a crazy score to give. But I will give this album for sure a 4.5 out of 5 stars for sure. I gotta give this album a 4.5 out of 5. That feels right. This album is one of the best albums of the year so far. Definitely one of the best. To me, it's rap album of the year so far. I love a lot of albums that's come out so far this year, but to me, this is definitely rap album of the year. In terms of bars, production, execution, you know, themes, just all that. To me, this is rap album of the year. I'm looking forward to seeing what else will come out this year, but to me, Kendrick got it so far, and this album is definitely a 4.5 out of 5 stars. But let me know what y'all think about that rating down below. Alright, y'all, that's my review of Kendrick's new album, Mr. Morale and the Big Steppers. Hope you enjoyed it. Let me know down below what you thought about the album. Do you love it? Do you hate it? Do you think it's okay? It could have been better. I hope you don't hate it or think it was okay, because I think this album is amazing. But let me know what y'all thought about down below. Let me know what you think about, you know, the rollout, how it came out. Let me know what you want from Kendrick in terms of, like, you know, performances or, like, you know, rollout ideas. What do you want from Kendrick? Like, what do you want to see from him for this era? Let me know what are your favorite tracks as well down below. Let me know what else you would have loved to see on the album, like maybe some other artists or some producers, or you know, if you feel like there's something missing from the album, let me know down below as well. I'd love to hear that. But yeah, man, I love this album. I hope y'all loved it too. Let me know what y'all thought about it down below. And if you haven't already, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, okay? Appreciate y'all. Thank you. And like I always say, guys, live your best life, drink more water, stay woke, and if you're mad or sad, go listen to your favorite song, make you feel better. Or go listen to one of these songs, it'll definitely make you feel better for sure. It might give you a little trauma, but then it'll make you feel better, I promise. Alright, y'all, this has been your boy Bright, the R&B Kid. Thank you for watching, but for now, I'm signing off, baby. Bye, y'all. Peace.
I came to vibe, you came to function, just do that, baby. Don't worry about nothing, no. I came to vibe, you came to function, just do that, baby. Don't worry about nothing, no. Relax just a little bit. You don't gotta worry, you can just